The first time she saw the child, she thought it was a trick of the light. The corridor was quiet, too quiet for a station that usually hummed with voices, boots, and the distant clatter of machinery. Emergency lights pulsed in slow intervals, painting everything in shades of red and shadow. Dr. Alara Voss tightened her grip on the medkit and moved carefully, her breath steady but her heart racing faster with every step. Something had gone very wrong. The distress signal had been fragmented, barely coherent. Unknown vessel docked. Hostile boarding. Casualties. Then silence. When the call finally reached the nearest human outpost, Alara had volunteered without hesitation. She was a xenobiologist, a medic, and perhaps most importantly, she was stubborn enough to go where others hesitated. Now she wondered if stubbornness would get her killed. She turned the corner and froze. At the far end of the corridor, partially hidden behind an overturned crate, something small moved. Not the heavy, deliberate motion of a soldier. Something lighter, quicker, a flicker. Alara exhaled slowly. "Hello," she called out, her voice softer than she expected. "I'm not here to hurt you." No response. She stepped forward, one cautious step at a time. The station smelled faintly metallic, tinged with something sharper, unfamiliar. Alien. Another movement. A small shape darted further back, pressing itself against the wall. Alara crouched down, lowering herself to appear less threatening. "It's okay," she said gently. "You're safe now." That wasn't entirely true, but it was close enough. The child emerged slowly. At first glance, it was unlike anything she had ever seen, and she had seen a lot. Its skin shimmered faintly, a pale iridescent tone that caught the red emergency light and bent it into soft hues of blue and silver. Its eyes were large, luminous, reflecting the world with an unsettling clarity. Delicate ridges framed its face, almost like a crown grown from bone and light. It was beautiful, and terrified. The child's breathing was shallow, uneven. One of its limbs hung at an unnatural angle, and dark fluid pooled beneath it, thicker than human blood and glowing faintly in the dim light. "Injured?" Alara whispered. She moved a little closer, slowly opening her medkit. "I'm a doctor," she said, though she doubted the child understood the words. "I can help." The child flinched at the sight of the tools. Alara paused. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small holo emitter. With a soft click, it projected a simple animation into the air, a glowing shape that pulsed gently, shifting into a universal symbol for calm she had used in first contact scenarios before. The child's eyes locked onto it. "It's okay," she repeated, softer now. A long moment passed. Then, trembling, the child took a step forward. That was all the permission she needed. Alara worked carefully, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The limb was fractured, the tissue torn in a way she had never encountered before. She adjusted her tools on the fly, relying on instinct and years of experience. The child made a soft, high-pitched sound as she cleaned the wound. "I know," Alara murmured. "I know it hurts." She hesitated before administering the pain suppressor. Human medicine wasn't always compatible with alien biology, but the child's vitals, as far as she could interpret them, were destabilizing. "Trust me," she whispered. She injected a minimal dose. The effect was almost immediate. The child's breathing slowed, the tension easing just enough for Alara to continue. She set the limb, applying a stabilizing field from her kit. The glow of the device wrapped gently around the injury, holding everything in place while encouraging natural regeneration. When she was done, she leaned back slightly, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "There," she said softly. "You're going to be okay." The child looked at her. Really looked at her. For a moment, the fear was still there, flickering beneath the surface. But something else appeared alongside it. Curiosity, confusion, and something deeper, something Alara couldn't quite name. The child reached out. Its small, delicate hand brushed against her glove. Alara smiled. And then the alarms began. Not the low emergency hum that had been echoing through the station. This was different. Sharp, urgent. Alive. Incoming vessels. Alara's smile faded. Of course, she muttered. She activated her comm, but static answered her. Whatever had attacked the station earlier had done a thorough job. She was on her own. The child's grip tightened slightly. It's okay, Alara said again, though this time the words felt heavier. We'll figure this out. She stood, carefully lifting the child into her arms. It was lighter than she expected, fragile in a way that made her instinctively protective. Let's get you somewhere safe. She moved quickly now, heading toward the nearest intact shuttle bay. If the attackers were returning, she needed to be gone before they arrived. Or at least hidden. The station trembled faintly beneath her feet. Too late. A deep, resonant sound echoed through the structure, like metal being torn apart by something vast and unstoppable. The lights flickered violently. Alara ducked into a side corridor, pressing herself against the wall. She held the child close, one hand instinctively shielding its head. Heavy footsteps echoed in the distance. Not human, not anything she recognized. She held her breath. The footsteps passed, slow and deliberate, accompanied by a low, guttural vibration that she felt more than heard. Predators. Her mind raced. The child. The attack. The silence. This wasn't random. She looked down at the child in her arms. Who are you? She whispered. The child's luminous eyes met hers. And then, impossibly, her comm crackled to life. Identify yourself. The voice was clear, controlled, and unmistakably alien. Alara froze. Unidentified human. The voice continued. You are in possession of a high-value individual. Surrender immediately. Alara's grip tightened. High value. She glanced down at the child again. Royal, she realized suddenly. The ridges, the markings, the way the child carried itself even in fear. This wasn't just any alien child. This was someone important. Very important. No, Alara said quietly. There was a pause on the comm. Clarify, the voice demanded. I said no, she repeated, louder this time. The child is injured. I'm not handing him over to whoever just slaughtered this station. Another pause. Longer this time. You misunderstand, the voice said at last. We are not the attackers. We are the retrieval force. Alara almost laughed. Convenient, she said. You are making a critical error, the voice replied, calm but edged with something sharper now. The child you hold is heir to the Celestine throne. Entire systems will burn if they are not returned. Alara looked down at the child. The child looked back. Systems will burn. Maybe. But right now, all she saw was a scared, injured kid who had reached out to her for help. I'm a doctor, she said slowly. Not a courier. Silence. Then, quieter, almost restrained, the voice spoke again. What do you want? Alara hesitated. She hadn't expected that. I want a guarantee, she said finally. That the child will be safe. That whoever attacked this station won't get anywhere near them again. You are in no position to negotiate. Then we're done talking. She cut the comm. Her heart pounded in her chest. That had probably been a terrible idea. The child made a soft sound, almost like a question. Alara adjusted her grip, holding them closer. Don't worry, she murmured. Humans are very good at making terrible decisions and surviving anyway. Another tremor shook the station. She needed to move. Fast. The shuttle bay was only a few corridors away, but the path was no longer safe. She could hear distant clashes now, energy discharges, the unmistakable sounds of conflict. Two forces, fighting over this child. Great. Alara took a different route, weaving through maintenance corridors and half-lit service passages. The air grew warmer, the hum of the station louder here. Almost there, she turned the final corner, and stopped dead. A figure stood in the center of the corridor. Tall, armored, radiating a presence that made the air feel heavy. Its gaze locked onto her instantly. Alara's pulse spiked. The child in her arms went very still. The figure tilted its head slightly. Human, it said, its voice not through the comm now but directly, resonating in the space around them. You have something that belongs to us. Alara shifted her stance, subtly placing herself between the figure and the child. Not happening, she said. The figure took a step forward. The floor seemed to tremble with the motion. You cannot protect it, it said. You are fragile. Temporary. Alara's grip tightened. Maybe, she said. But right now, I'm all they've got. The figure paused. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in its expression. Not doubt, not quite, recognition. Then it raised its weapon. Alara didn't think. She moved. The corridor exploded into motion. Light flashed, heat surged, and she dove behind a support column as the blast scorched the wall where she had been standing. The child clung to her, silent but tense. Hold on, she shouted, more for herself than for them. She reached into her medkit, fingers closing around a compact device. Not a weapon, technically. But it would do. She leaned out just enough to toss it. The device hit the floor and detonated in a burst of blinding light and electromagnetic interference. The figure staggered, just for a second. That was enough. Alara ran. She didn't look back. The shuttle bay doors were half open, one of the small craft still intact inside. She sprinted across the threshold, her boots echoing against the metal floor. Come on, she muttered, racing to the cockpit. She strapped the child into the co-pilot seat, securing him as best she could. Stay with me, she said, her voice softer again. The child's eyes never left her. Alara powered up the shuttle. Systems flickered, protested, then came alive. Behind her, heavy footsteps approached. No time. She slammed the launch sequence. The shuttle lurched, engines roaring to life as it tore free from the station just as the bay doors exploded inward. Space opened around them, vast and cold. Alara didn't slow down. She pushed the shuttle to its limits, putting as much distance between them and the station as possible. Only when the stars steadied and the immediate danger faded did she allow herself to breathe. She glanced at the child. You okay? The child studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, it reached out again, placing its hand over hers. This time, Alara felt something. Not physical. A warmth, a connection, and a single, clear impression in her mind. Safe. Alara smiled, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Yeah, she whispered. Safe. For now. Far behind them, fleets gathered. Warships from civilizations older and more powerful than anything humanity had yet encountered converged on the ruined station. Signals were exchanged, accusations made, lines drawn, and at the center of it all, one simple, undeniable fact spread through every channel, every command deck, every throne room. A human had taken the royal child. Not captured, not stolen, saved, and refused to give them back. On the small shuttle drifting between stars, drive. Alara Voss adjusted the course slightly, her eyes heavy but determined. Let's find you a better home, she said quietly. The child's hand tightened around hers. And somewhere, deep within the vast machinery of interstellar politics and power, something shifted. Because humanity had just done what it always did best. They chose the individual over the empire. And they were ready to face whatever came next. The stars did not feel empty anymore. Alara noticed it first as a subtle pressure, like being watched by something too vast to fully understand. The shuttle drifted silently through a corridor of distant light, its engines running low to avoid detection. Every system was stable, every signal quiet, and yet the silence itself felt crowded. She leaned back in her seat, rubbing her tired eyes. That's new, she muttered. The child stirred beside her. It had been hours since they escaped the station. The initial panic had faded into a fragile calm, the kind that only exists when exhaustion outweighs fear. The stabilizer field around the child's injured limb pulsed gently, indicating steady recovery. Physically, at least, they were safe. Mentally, that was harder to measure. Alara glanced at the navigation panel. No clear destination, no allies nearby, just open space and a growing list of unknowns. All right, she said softly, more to organize her thoughts than anything else. Let's review. Your royalty. Multiple factions are willing to kill for you. I just refused to hand you over. And now we're floating in the middle of nowhere with a shuttle that barely qualifies as spaceworthy. She sighed. Perfect. The child made a soft sound. Alara turned toward them. Yeah, I know. Not ideal. The child's luminous eyes studied her again, that same quiet intensity from before. Then, slowly, the air between them shimmered. Alara froze. A faint projection formed, not from any device she recognized, but from the child itself. It wasn't a clear image, more like fragments of light and memory stitched together. She saw towering structures, elegant and impossibly tall, their surfaces flowing like liquid crystal. She saw beings like the child, moving with grace and quiet authority. She saw light, so much light, radiating from a central figure seated upon something that could only be described as a throne. Then the image shifted. Darkness, fire, the same structures collapsing under violent force. Shadows moving through the chaos. Screams, silent, but unmistakable. Alara's chest tightened. An attack, not just any attack, a targeted one. The projection flickered, then faded. The child lowered their hand. Alara exhaled slowly. That was your home, wasn't it? The child didn't respond with words, but the answer was clear. Yes, Alara whispered. I thought so. She leaned forward, elbows resting on her knees. And whoever hit that station, they weren't random pirates. No response. But again, she didn't need one. Okay, she said, straightening. So this is bigger than I thought. Much bigger. The shuttle's sensors chimed softly. Alara's head snapped up. Contact, she murmured, fingers already moving across the console. A signal had appeared on the edge of their range. Weak, but deliberate. Not a broadcast. A directed ping. Someone was looking for them. Of course they are, she said under her breath. She quickly ran a scan. The signal pattern was unfamiliar, but structured. Organized. Not the chaotic signature of the attackers from the station. Different group, she concluded. The child's attention shifted to the console, their posture tensing. You recognize it? Alara asked. A pause. Then the child gave a small, hesitant nod. Alara leaned back slightly. All right, that's something. She hesitated, weighing her options. Answering the signal could mean help. Or it could mean walking straight into another trap. Ignoring it might not be possible for long. The signal pinged again, more insistent this time. Alara glanced at the child. What do you think? The child looked at her, then at the console, then back at her. Trust me. The same feeling as before, clear and undeniable. Alara let out a slow breath. You're really putting a lot of faith in me for someone who just met me. The child's expression didn't change. Neither did the feeling. Alara gave a small, tired smile. Yeah, I guess I'm doing the same. She reached forward and opened the channel. This is Dr. Alara Voss, she said, keeping her voice steady. Identify yourself. Static crackled for a moment. Then a new voice answered. Human vessel, you are in restricted space. Power down your engines and prepare for escort. Alara blinked. That's not very reassuring. We will not repeat the instruction. She frowned. Yeah, I heard you the first time. She muted the channel and leaned back. Well, that's not great. The child shifted slightly, the gaze focused. Alara tapped her fingers against the console. Escort usually means, we don't trust you enough to let you leave but not enough to shoot you immediately. She glanced at the sensors again. The signal source was getting closer. Fast. They're not giving us much choice, she said. The child's hand moved, hovering near hers again. Alara hesitated, then placed her hand under it. The connection returned instantly. This time, it wasn't an image. It was a feeling. Calm. Not absolute certainty. Not blind trust. But calm. Alara closed her eyes for a brief moment. All right, she said quietly. We'll try it your way. She powered down the engines. The shuttle drifted, slowing until it became just another piece of debris in the vast emptiness. Moments later, they appeared. 3 ships. Sleek, angular, their surfaces dark but edged with faint lines of blue light. They moved with precision, forming a loose perimeter around the shuttle. Alara whistled softly. Well, they're not subtle. The comm activated automatically. Human vessel, maintain your current state. You will be boarded. Alara raised an eyebrow. Straight to boarding. Efficient. She glanced at the child. Still feeling good about this. The child didn't hesitate. Yes. Alara sighed. All right then. She stood, grabbing her medkit out of habit more than necessity. Let's see who our new friends are. The docking sequence was smooth, almost silent. A faint vibration ran through the shuttle as the connection locked into place. Alara moved toward the airlock, her posture relaxed but her mind sharp. The door hissed open. The beings on the other side were familiar. Not identical to the child, but clearly related. Taller, more developed, their features sharper and more defined. Their eyes held the same luminous quality, though tempered by experience and something else. Discipline. One of them stepped forward. Alara Vos, it said, pronouncing her name with surprising accuracy. You have something that belongs to us. Alara folded her arms. I'm starting to get tired of hearing that. The being's expression didn't change. Return the air. Alara leaned slightly to the side, just enough for them to see the child behind her. The reaction was immediate. Every one of them shifted, their posture tightening, their focus locking onto the small figure. Your Highness, the lead one said, lowering its head slightly. The child didn't move. Alara watched carefully. They're not responding, she said. And before you try anything, they're injured. The being's gaze snapped back to her. Explain. Alara gestured vaguely. Your enemies got to them first. Broken limb, significant trauma. I stabilized it, but they need proper care. A pause. Then the being stepped forward again, slower this time. We will take them from here. Alara didn't move. No, she said. The temperature in the airlock seemed to drop. You misunderstand your position, the being said. No, Alara replied calmly. You misunderstand mine. She took a step forward, placing herself fully between them and the child. I'm not handing them over to anyone until I know they're actually safe. The other beings shifted, a subtle but unmistakable sign of tension. You defy us, one of them said. Alara shrugged slightly. Seems to be a pattern today. The lead being studied her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, unexpectedly, the child moved. They stepped forward, their injured limbs still supported by the stabilizer field. Slowly, deliberately, they reached out and placed their hand against Alara's back. The connection flared, stronger than before, not just calm, something else, authority. The beings in the airlock reacted instantly. Every one of them lowered their head. The lead one took a step back. Your Highness, it said, its voice quieter now. You choose, the human. Alara blinked. Wait, she said. What? The child didn't look at her. The gaze remained fixed on their people, and the message was clear. Yes. Silence filled the airlock. Alara glanced between them. Okay. I feel like I missed something important. The lead being straightened slightly, though it kept its head inclined. The Heir has invoked the right of binding, it said. Alara frowned. The what? The being met her eyes again. By their will, you are now their protector. Until they release you, or until one of you dies. Alara stared at it. Excuse me. The words hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. She looked down at the child. The child looked up at her, and for the first time, Alara saw it clearly. Not just fear, not just trust, choice. You did this, she asked softly. The child didn't look away, didn't hesitate. Yes, Alara let out a short, incredulous laugh. You just legally bound me to alien royalty. The lead being spoke again. This is no small act. The right is sacred. It cannot be undone lightly. Alara ran a hand through her hair. Of course it can't. She looked back at the beings in the airlock. All right, let's say I go along with this. What happens now? The being straightened fully. Now, it said, you come with us. Alara narrowed her eyes slightly. And how do I know you're not just going to separate us the moment we're on your ship? You do not, the being replied. Honesty. I appreciate that, Alara said dryly. She glanced at the child again. The connection pulsed faintly. Still calm. Still certain. Alara sighed. Fine, she said. But I stay with them. At all times. The being nodded once. Agreed. Alara gestured toward the interior of the shuttle. Give me a minute. She stepped back inside, the child following closely. The door sealed behind them. Alara leaned against the wall, closing her eyes briefly. Okay, she whispered. Let's process this. She looked at the child. You just made me your, what, guardian, bodyguard, official human problem solver. The child tilted their head slightly. Alara huffed a small laugh. Yeah, that sounds about right. She pushed off the wall and crouched down in front of them. Listen, she said, her voice softer now. I don't fully understand what you did, but I get the intention. She reached out, adjusting the stabilizer field gently. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Not until you're safe. The child's hand found hers again. The connection flared. This time, it carried something new. Not just trust. Relief. Alara smiled faintly. Yeah, me too. She stood, taking a steadying breath. All right, she said. Let's go meet your people. The airlock opened once more. This time, Alara stepped through with purpose. The beings outside parted slightly, giving them space. Respect, not for her, for the choice the child had made. Alara noticed it anyway. Lead the way, she said. They moved through the connecting corridor into the larger ship. The interior was unlike anything she had seen before. Smooth surfaces, flowing architecture, light embedded into the very structure itself. It felt less like walking through a machine and more like moving inside a living entity. The crew they passed all reacted the same way. They saw the child. They lowered their heads. And then, almost as an afterthought, they looked at Alara. Curiosity, confusion, and something else. Caution. Word was spreading fast. The human who had taken the air. The human who had refused to give them back. The human who had been chosen. Alara kept her expression neutral, her posture steady. Inside, her thoughts were anything but. What have I gotten myself into? She murmured under her breath. The child squeezed her hand slightly. Alara glanced down at them. Then she smiled. Yeah, she said quietly. We'll figure it out. Ahead of them, doors opened into a larger chamber. And whatever came next, was waiting. The chamber was too quiet for a place that powerful. Alara felt it the moment she stepped inside. Not silence in the literal sense, but the kind that pressed against your thoughts, as if the room itself demanded attention. The walls curved upward into impossible heights, formed from the same flowing material she had seen throughout the ship, but here it pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. At the center stood a circular platform, and above it, a throne. Not built, not assembled. Grown. It rose like a crystalline bloom, elegant and terrible at the same time, radiating a soft, shifting light that made it difficult to look at directly. Alara exhaled slowly. Subtle, she muttered. The child beside her didn't react to the throne. They reacted to the emptiness. Alara noticed the shift immediately. The small tightening of the grip. The faint flicker of something in their luminous eyes. This place wasn't just important. It was supposed to be occupied. Where is everyone? Alara asked quietly. The being leading them, taller than the others, clearly holding some rank, stepped forward onto the platform. Gone. Alara raised an eyebrow. That's not reassuring. They are not dead, the being clarified. But they are no longer here. Alara folded her arms. You're going to need to be more specific than that. The being turned to face her fully. The Celestine court has been displaced. The attack you witnessed was not an isolated incident. It was the beginning. Alara's expression hardened slightly. Beginning of what? The being hesitated. That alone told her more than any answer would have. The child stepped forward. The moment their foot touched the platform, the entire chamber reacted. Light surged. Not violently, not aggressively, but with recognition. The walls brightened, the floor shimmered, and the throne above them responded with a low, resonant hum. Alara instinctively stepped closer to the child. Okay. That's new. The child didn't seem surprised. They moved toward the center, their injured limbs still supported but stronger now. The stabilizer field flickered, adjusting to their movement. The being beside Alara lowered its head again. The throne recognizes its heir, it said. Alara glanced at it. Good to know something does. The child reached the center of the platform. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the light intensified, and the room opened. Not physically, mentally. Alara staggered slightly as something pressed against her mind. Not invasive, not hostile, but overwhelming. Information, emotion, memory. She saw the same structures from before, the same elegant civilization, but now she saw more. Order, balance, power held not through force, but through understanding. Then it shifted. Darkness again, but clearer this time. The attackers, not shadows now, but shapes. Massive, armored forms moving with brutal precision. Their weapons tore through the Celestine defenses as if they were nothing. And at the center of it all, a figure, larger than the others, still, watching, waiting. Alara's breath caught. The vision snapped away. She staggered, catching herself before she fell. Okay, she said hoarsely. That's a lot. The child turned toward her. Concern. Alara waved it off weakly. I'm fine. Just, next time, maybe warn me before the cosmic memory download. The being beside her spoke again. You were not meant to see that. Alara shot it a look. Well, I did. So let's work with it. She gestured toward the platform. Those things, they're not just raiders. They're organized, focused. They knew exactly what they were doing. Yes, the being said quietly. Alara narrowed her eyes. And you know who they are. Another pause. Alara let out a sharp breath. Of course you do. The child moved again. They stepped closer to Alara, reaching out. When their hand touched hers, the connection surged stronger than ever before. This time, it wasn't just feelings or fragments. It was clarity, a name, or something close to one. Not a word in any human language, but the meaning translated anyway. The Devourers. Alara's stomach tightened. That's not a comforting name. The being nodded once. They are ancient, older than our records. They do not conquer, they consume. Consume what? Alara asked. The answer came from both the being and the child at the same time. Everything. Silence fell over the chamber. Alara ran a hand over her face. All right, so we're dealing with galaxy-level nightmares. Fantastic. She looked down at the child. And you're their target. The child didn't deny it. Alara exhaled slowly. Because you're the heir. Yes, the being confirmed. Alara paced a few steps, her mind racing. Okay, let's think. If they wanted you dead, they had their chance at the station. But they didn't finish the job. That means, she stopped. They don't just want you gone, she said. They want something from you. The being's expression shifted slightly. We have considered this. And, Alara pressed. We do not know what. Alara let out a humorless laugh. That's reassuring. The child's grip tightened again. Alara looked down at him, then back at the throne. Unless, she murmured. She stepped forward, guiding the child gently back onto the center of the platform. Try again, she said softly. But this time, focus on them. The child hesitated, then nodded. They closed their eyes. The chamber responded immediately. The light surged once more, but this time it was different. Sharper, more focused. Alara felt the connection again, but she didn't resist it. She leaned into it. The vision came, not of the past, of something deeper, a structure, not physical, conceptual, a network. The Celestine throne wasn't just a seat of power. It was a key, a living interface between civilizations, between systems, between something larger. Alara's breath hitched. No way. The Devourers didn't want the child dead. They wanted access. Access to whatever this throne connected to. Something vast. Something powerful enough to reshape entire systems. The vision shattered. Alara stumbled back, her heart pounding. They're not just destroying you, she said, her voice tight. They're trying to take control of your entire network. Your influence. Your everything. The being's silence was answer enough. And the child, Alara continued, looking down, is the only one who can access it. Yes, the being said quietly. Alara laughed again, but there was no humor in it. Of course they are. She looked around the chamber. At the empty throne. At the small figure beside her. At the weight of everything that was about to happen. Okay, she said. So here's the situation. She raised a finger. They're coming. Another finger. They want the kid. Another. And if they get them, they get whatever this is. She gestured to the room. The being inclined its head. Correct. Alara dropped her hand. Then we don't let them. The simplicity of the statement hung in the air. The being studied her. You speak as if that is possible. Alara met its gaze. It has to be. The chamber trembled. Not violently, but enough. Everyone froze. The being's head snapped toward the entrance. They have found us. Alara's pulse spiked. That was fast. Nothing escapes them for long, the being said. The child moved closer to Alara. Alara knelt down in front of them, placing her hands gently on their shoulders. Hey, she said softly. Look at me. The child did. You remember what I said back on the shuttle? Alara asked. A small nod. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Not now. Not ever. You got that? The child's expression steadied. Yes. Alara smiled faintly. Good. She stood, turning to the being. How long do we have? Minutes, it replied. Alara nodded. All right, then we make those minutes count. The being tilted its head slightly. You have a plan. Alara exhaled slowly. Not a great one, but it's something. She looked up at the throne. Can it be shut down? She asked. The being hesitated. The throne is not meant to be deactivated. It is a constant. Alara's eyes narrowed. Everything can be shut down. If we sever the connection, the being said slowly, the network will collapse. Entire systems will lose coordination. Worlds will be isolated. Alara's jaw tightened. Better isolated than controlled by whatever those things are. The being didn't respond. Alara looked at the child. This is your call, she said quietly. Not mine. The weight of it settled. The child looked at the throne. Then at Alara. Then back at the throne. Their small hand slipped into hers. The connection flared. Not fear. Not hesitation. Resolve. Yes. Alara nodded once. All right. She turned back to the being. Tell me how to do it. The alarms began. Loud. Urgent. Unmistakable. The ship shook as something impacted its outer hull. They're here, the being said. Alara didn't look back. Then we don't have time to argue. The being stepped forward. The Heir must interface directly with the throne. You will need to support them. Alara glanced down. Support them how? You are bound, the being said. Your presence stabilizes them. Alara huffed. Of course it does. Another impact. Closer. Alara squeezed the child's hand. Ready. The child nodded. Together, they stepped onto the platform. The light surged one final time. But this time, it wasn't welcoming. It was resisting. The throne didn't want to be shut down. Of course you don't, Alara muttered. She tightened her grip. Do it, she said. The child reached out. The moment their hand touched the light, everything exploded into motion. The chamber shook violently as the Devourers breached the outer defenses. The doors behind them tore open, metal bending and snapping like it was nothing. Figures flooded in. Massive, armored, unstoppable. The same ones from the vision. At their center, that figure, still, watching, waiting. Alara didn't look at them. She focused on the child. Stay with me, she said, her voice firm. The connection between them burned now, brighter than anything before. The throne resisted. The Devourers advanced. The being and its guards moved to intercept, but they were outmatched. Alara felt it. Time was running out. Come on, she whispered. You're stronger than this. The child's eyes flared with light. The throne cracked. Not physically, but something within it fractured. The network destabilized. The Devourers reacted instantly. The central figure moved. Fast. Too fast. It crossed the chamber in a blur. Alara saw it coming. She moved without thinking, placing herself between it and the child. The impact was immense. Pain exploded through her body as she was thrown back, slamming against the platform. The world spun, her vision blurring. But she didn't let go. Her hand stayed locked with the child's. Finish it, she shouted. The child screamed, not in fear, in effort. The light surged one final time. And then, silence. The throne went dark. The connection severed. The network collapsed. The Devourers froze. Every one of them, including the central figure. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, slowly, the massive form turned its head. Not at the child, at Alara. Their eyes met, and for the first time, it hesitated. Alara forced herself to stand, her body screaming in protest. She stepped forward, one step, then another. You wanted power, she said, her voice rough but steady. You came to the wrong species. The figure didn't move. Alara kept walking. You thought we'd hand it over. That we'd make the logical choice. She stopped a few feet away. But humans, she said, a faint, defiant smile forming. We're terrible at that. The figure stared at her. Then, slowly, it stepped back. The others followed. Retreat. Alara blinked. Wait, she muttered. That actually worked. The Devourers withdrew, their forms dissolving into the shadows they had come from. Within seconds, they were gone. The chamber fell silent once more. Alara stood there, breathing heavily, her mind struggling to catch up. Behind her, the child squeezed her hand. Alive. Safe. Alara let out a long, shaky breath. Well, she said quietly. That was something. The being approached slowly, its expression unreadable. You have done what none of us could, it said. Alara shook her head. No, we did. She glanced down at the child. The child looked up at her, and smiled. Alara smiled back. The galaxy outside would take time to recover. Systems would need to rebuild, to reconnect, to find new ways to stand without the throne's guidance. But they would, because that's what living things did. They adapted. They endured. Alara looked out at the stars beyond the chamber. They'll be back, she said quietly. The being nodded. Yes. Alara's grip on the child's hand tightened. Good, she said. A faint, determined smile crossed her face. Next time, she added, we'll be ready. And for the first time since this all began, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like the beginning of something new.